Oh, we are live. I'm going to just take a step back out of respect for our guests here and say welcome to all of you, and thank you to those of you who are joining us via live stream. This is the fourth in an ongoing series called Make It Matter, taking action to advance equity. And so really pleased to have our guests here today to tackle a tough conversation around racism and corporate responsibility. My name is Heidi Botts-Rogers, and on behalf of the Inclusion Action Collective, we're just really glad that you've made time to make this matter for you, because we really believe that modeling this kind of dialogue is important, and we hope you're having these kinds of talks in your workplaces, around your dinner tables, in your communities, churches, etc., or places of faith, etc. So before we kick the conversation off today, I'd like to introduce Kjirsten White, who is here. You may wave a little, Kjirsten. This is his amazing space that we're in, and I thought it might be nice for you just to talk a little bit about your business.
Thank you, Heidi, and thank you for doing this. I mean, this is important stuff. We call the barbershop the Black Man's Country Club, and there's a book called Cutting Along the Color Line that both Ron and I are big fans of. And the book talks about the historical significance of the black barbershop. It was one of the first ways that slaves were able to buy back their freedom, because white men didn't do service work. And so one of the most valuable assets to the slave owner was a mulatto slave that wouldn't draw blood. Because to be considered affluent, you had to have a perfect shave every day. And so over time, these men became pillars of the community, but they also had a lot of influence. And generationally, it's been a place where black men who, for my generation especially, Common's line is, my generation never understood working for the man. You know, I had a solemn promise to myself that I'm from the South, and I just always loved the idea of being free. And so the barbershop gave me that sense of freedom. You know, today I own this building. We worked really hard to pay off the mortgage, and so that allows us to have a lot of freedom. I mean, especially given no one would have expected a pandemic. I certainly wouldn't have in my lifetime. But this barbershop has allowed me to be able to thrive because it is a place of freedom for me, and then also a conduit for my community. So those four letters, HWMR, that's what they stand for. You know, really freedom, Black excellence, and our country club and our place. So welcome.
Thank you, Kjirsten. And with that, I'm going to step aside and allow our holder of the space today, Tanya Jackman-Hampton. Thank you so much for being here and holding this circle. And I'd like to just welcome our guests again. Thank you for being here, and I look forward to the conversation.
Thank you, Heidi, and you know what a delight it is to be here. And Kjirsten, I really just in the moment of this storytelling am cherishing what you shared. My experience with going to the salon was mom saying, "You're going to the salon," and it became a ritual, frankly, every Saturday that she would take me to the salon, and I didn't know the essence of understanding the history behind a barbershop, and I'm sure that transpires too in a salon, a black salon. I've been going to VIP for at least the last 20 years. I'm sure you're familiar with VIP. Tiffany has done a phenomenal job there, as yourself. And so thank you for having us in your space and being a part of today's dialogue. Really appreciate you as a person.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I want to just kick us off on our topic today and really start talking about what is racial justice and how that relates to corporate responsibility. How do each of us sit in that and experience that and try to really understand what are our contributions to the conversation that we're having today, and also the contribution to how we can change what's in our immediate world and even beyond. I'll kick us off in the sense of telling a story to contribute to who I am in this conversation, and then allow you all, obviously, that opportunity as well. But I have been a person that may be surprised for some. I'm a born and raised Minnesotan, and so I am from Minnesota. I've been here all of my life with the exception of 2 years, and I actually am a legacy member. So I am the granddaughter of Cecil E. Newman and Leanna Q. Newman, who have namesake streets in South Minneapolis. One of which is a namesake street that sits behind Kmart's store, which is around the corner from Lake Street. And also, my grandmother's namesake street is the street that runs down 4th Avenue across the Minnesota Spokesman Recorder. And so that's our family-owned paper. Tracy Williams Dillard actually is the president of the Minnesota Spokesman Recorder and leads the organization today and has for about the last 30 years. It's an institution that's been around for 85 years. It's a story that I'm even refreshing myself with today. And one of the things that I'll say is that my grandfather wanted to contribute to the conversation around race in Minnesota and how do we address it. Unfortunately, he had an experience where he saw an African American family moving into the neighborhood and harassed by police. And so that was his experience coming into Minnesota at the age of 22. And also he experienced racial covenants, of which one of the properties that I live on today is a racial covenant property that I learned about, frankly, in the Jim Crow of the North video. I always thought that that was a video that was just about Jim Crow of the North, but not necessarily about Minnesota. So I, too, am learning about Minnesota being a native here. I'm also learning about race being a diversity inclusion organizational development practitioner. And so I offer that to say this is a journey. I actually don't always like that word because realization is it's somewhat cliche, but also at the same token, this is a journey. And if the more that we can think about, so my last part, I'll say, the more that we can think about diversity inclusion being a part of just life, a part of business, and how we move change forward, I frankly think that we might be able to accomplish so much more because babies are being born every day. They have different perspectives, just like all of us have perspectives. And they need to evolve, and so we need to teach, and they need to teach, and they need to teach. And so this isn't going to end. We're here for a lifetime. With that, I'll pass it to you, Ron.
Ron Richard. I'm a banker, been in banking probably since I was 17. Commercial banking for, I think it's closing in on 14 years now. It's crazy. Kind of lose track after 5 years. I focus mostly on nonprofit and commercial banking. And I'm originally from Chicago. I moved here in 91, and the storm of 91, I was like, I think I was 10 or 11, and I hated this place because Halloween, it's snowing. What do you do, right?
Took your weather right away.
Exactly. Like I hated this place. I left every year until high school. Went to De La Salle, and I think that's when high school you start to get the girls around. And you start to play on the varsity team, so you start to get a little confidence. So I was like, Minnesota ain't all that bad, So been here for a long time. I actually own property as well, and this brother Kjirsten. I was out, and keep a short story, short. I was eventually going to move out of Minnesota. I was traveling to DC. I have family in Atlanta. I have family in, my parents are from Mississippi and Louisiana, and I was like, I got to get out of here because of the race issue here, where it's what it's like in Mississippi. We know, oh, you can't go to that spot. They don't like you over there, so you know where it's at. Here, it was always kind of this, you can go over there, but you don't really know where you stand. It's, it's kind of that, what you would call benign neglect, where they just don't say anything, but you just don't know. Nobody will give you a straight answer. So you kind of just in this loop of not getting ahead. So when I met, this brother, somebody told me, I was like, man, I need to find a barbershop. And he's like, oh, I know who you gotta go to. You gotta go to Houston. Like, gotta go to Houston. And he knew immediately. It wasn't that I was looking for a good haircut. Obviously, I am looking for a good haircut, but he understood that it's a relationship. And that's what I was looking for. When I came here, I was like, this is like being in DC at Sankofa and at Busboy and Poets, or being in Atlanta. I was like, this is dope. Like, man, I can't believe you're doing this. And his work around Camdentown, I was like, okay, what do I need to do to continue this going forward? And that's been my journey here, and I'm just happy to be here. So appreciate it.
Thank you, Ron. Wonderful. Yeah, absolutely. And Chicago's one of my favorite cities.
I don't think anybody who talks bad about Chicago. downtown Chicago, the food, you can't beat it. You can't beat it.
That's exactly right. Houston.
I'll be brief because I talked a little bit already. Houston White, I think of myself first and foremost as a creative. And right now my life is about solving one of my biggest challenges in this state, which is a sense of belonging. For young black men like myself who grew up in North Minneapolis, catching all the hell that existed here, we haven't necessarily participated in the growth and the boom and the wealth creation and generation and legacy. And so I made it a point to just kind of stop complaining and say, what do I have? And I have this barbershop, and the barbershop, in my opinion, is one of the most important institutions to any black community. So how can we use that to connect the politicians, the business owners, the artists, and people who are just, like Ron was saying, looking for a place to just connect, find their tribe. And then beyond that, how can we start to say, let's take this up and down this block and imagine what an alternative black future in Minnesota could be. And so that's my work. I'm a kid from Mississippi who saw a black mayor, right? Black police officers, black bankers, and I never even really saw a white person until I was 6 years old outside of my community, because everything was, so that felt natural to me. When I moved to Minnesota, that was very different. And now that I'm 41, this is an eye-opener for me. Like, we've just basically sat idle and watched this persist for decades. And so I'm just committed to doing my little part of hopefully changing that or beginning to get people to see difference.
That's wonderful, Houston. I'm imagining, just a little bit of my imagination was similar to yours when I came back from Clark Atlanta University to Minnesota, having been on an all-black campus, and then coming to Minnesota, and some of the reflections that perhaps you had as I did, and realizing, wow, there's so much that I was immersed in that I didn't understand until I came back into it, or vis-a-vis vice versa for you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Peyton.
Hello, thank you. I'm Peyton Scott Russell. I'm a beautiful, powerful, creative, free man. That's me at my essence. And what I do is I make art. I'm a teaching artist, community leader, again, arts educator. And it's important to me that I share those kind of qualities and those ideas of what art can do as far as the power and the impact and the social impact, and how you tell a story and how you make people aware of the environment. I'm a native of Minnesota, born and raised. I lived in South Minneapolis in my wonder years, my childhood years, and then became a North Sider my early teens, and just really became of age over North. And then graduated from North High and moved to Chicago.
Okay.
Moved to Chicago, lived there for about 7 years, graduated from the School of the Art Institute. A little bit of cultural shock for me, coming from Minnesota, where black people weren't as abundant, and then moving to Chicago. And I remember the first time I saw an entire city bus filled with black folks, right? I was like, okay, I'm somewhere different. But then also going down the Dan Ryan and seeing the miles of the ghetto there, kind of coming of age over North Minneapolis, we considered that the hood, and we called it the ghetto, but we didn't really have a ghetto here. And I recognized that when I went to Chicago. So one of my highest passions in art is graffiti art. I've discovered that in high school, and that it spoke to me on a visceral level. It really gave me a sense of this freedom of expression without asking for permission. And of course, it wasn't until I became older, until I started teaching, how powerful that is if it's directed in the correct way. At school, learning the traditional art methods, drawing, painting, sculpture, and printmaking. I kept graffiti outside the school. It wasn't really accepted, of course, in the late 80s, early 90s, and really all through the 90s. So I kind of kept it in my back pocket and kind of did it, privately on my own. My students started to figure out that that's what I was into, and that was sort of, it became a focus. They wanted to learn more about what aerosol was, how do you tag, and what is this whole thing about writing your name in public. And it slowly started to be one of the focus parts that I taught. And I can say I'm one of the first people in the Twin Cities to teach graffiti as a fine art. And currently, over the last 10 years, that's what I've been focused on exclusively through my new program, Spray Finger. And of course, I'm sure we'll get into more dialogue later on and kind of how deep that goes. But it's been a blessing. I've had a lot of advances in increase in my career, and being able to explain and articulate how graffiti impacts community and society, and just how wonderful that is. And I think people are slowly beginning to understand that, especially now since we've gone through these protests, and people are seeing the writing on the wall and how that helps with healing and comfort and understanding. So I think I'm in a unique position to take that even further to the next step, so that people can understand how powerful graffiti is and how we actually need it. How we need the writing out in public.
Oh, that's exciting. I'm excited for you. I have a daughter who I was just literally writing her portfolio today on really what it means to have art in the social justice space. And so I'm thinking with our Minnesota stories and your trips to Chicago and her and your art, we could have many different conversations.
Can I overlap one more thing?
Yeah, you can.
So I can't go without talking about Houston. As a young adult, I started to get into the whole arts education piece, and for me, it really started off as sort of just another gig, trying to make ends meet, and discovered I loved it. Wanted to start into really focus on teaching at a serious level. In Houston was my very first student that started that whole path of me doing what I'm doing today.
That's awesome.
And when I talk about full circle, now that what he has established here, I look for him now as for mentorship and guidance, and I ask him questions about finances and branding and how do you present yourself, and so it's a real full circle thing that have come around, and here we are. He's the one who reached out to me and said, hey, there's this thing, you need to be a part of it for this discussion. So here we are, complete full circle. So thank you.
Oh, one, man. The village.
Yeah.
It's real.
It's beautiful. It's like true, right? Peer mentorship. It's awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you. My dear friend.
Hello. Hi everyone, I'm Kjirsten Mickesh, and I grew up in Mankato, so just south of here. Very white middle class community. My mom and dad, however, for a few years taught at Mankato State. And so we were exposed to a little more diversity than we might have been had they not had those jobs, because we were on campus a lot. And my mom and dad were both psychologists. So when we talk about conversation, we were encouraged to have very open conversation, to say what was on our mind. We all had my sister and I had a voice at our very young ages. We didn't get decision-making power, but we had a voice. We could disagree. We were encouraged to challenge. We were encouraged to disagree. And what I learned through, I learned the skill of conversation in terms of being open to different ideas and open to different opinions and disagreement and conflict. And that has really been very, very helpful for me as I move through my life in many ways. And in particular, as I moved into corporate America and spent 28 years in corporate America in different human resources leadership roles, and several years in diversity and inclusion. And a lot of the work that I did in most of my roles, but in particular when I was in diversity and inclusion, was very much about conversation. It was very much about connecting people through conversation and through the stories and the different experiences and the different perspectives that came with the difference that we brought into our organizations. And it was when we had that real conversation, when we could be vulnerable, when we could hear something that we didn't want to hear because it was really hard, when we could say what we needed to say, that magic happened. In terms of connection, in terms of shared understanding, and then the ability to walk together into something new, something different, some kind of transformation. So courageous conversation for me is really important, no matter what the topic. And I think when that conversation is done well, it connects. I left corporate America a couple of years ago, started a business called Connect Human, which is all about creating human connection that empowers people to improve their well-being and performance through meaningful conversation. I do some consulting and coaching with individuals and organizations. But for the last year and a half, I've been really focused on a kids product that teaches social and emotional skills through courageous conversation that my older son designed. So I'm in business with my older son now. So really, really excited to be here. And I know you talked about, Tanya, the learning journey. And, you know, having grown up with wonderful parents that helped me with that conversation, and then moving into my roles in corporate America, I along the way, I'm like, all right, I get this. And then I'm like, no, I don't. Oh, wait, okay, now I get it. No, I don't. And I have found, and I have completely accepted that I will always be learning. I will always be learning. And as much as I can invite people into a space to have conversation and hear what they have to say, that learning will take me and hopefully us to some really awesome places.
Yeah, that's awesome, Kjirsten. Thank you. What you've described is that humility, right? Culture of humility, and a really accepting that this is a lifelong journey. Yeah. Thank you so much. Glad to be here. Bill.
Great, thanks. I'm Bill McKinney. Excuse me. I'm also from down south. My dad was a Navy guy and was born in Charleston, South Carolina, and then lived in Virginia, and then West Virginia, and then Kentucky. So I came here to go to college and basically never left. So spent 20 years or so in corporate America. First at a big consulting firm, and then at a big company here in the Twin Cities, and then I sort of came to this conversation, I think, in a serious way about 7 or 8 years ago when my boss, who was the CEO at Thrivent, was asked to lead a project on disparities in the Twin Cities, and we started digging through the data and re-looking at the reality of this region. And what sort of struck me in a very visceral way was that if you just look at the data, that this is clearly the most racist region in America, which is a shocking thing for people that, progressive, white, liberal, urban area to sort of take on, and yet you can't look at the data any other way. I mean, we have the greatest disparities for educational attainment, for home ownership, for health outcomes, for incomes, for all of these things, and kind of like Ron, what I think you, Ron, or Kjirsten said about in Mississippi, the racism was much more overt, and that was my experience in Kentucky too. Was there were parts of town where white kids didn't go, and there were parts of town where black kids didn't go, and here I agree with you. I think it's much more about omission than commission, and what really struck me was that the problem wasn't that a lot of white people were doing bad things. It was a lot of white people were doing nothing. And I sort of have taken on just for myself to try to do my bit to make this community better by putting myself out there a little bit, which is uncomfortable and sometimes scary, sometimes humiliating, because you say dumb things or you don't realize things that you're not doing. But to me, it's I think this region has a lot of really great people that would like to do more and make it a better place for all of us. and we just need to find ways to create space for people to grow and to take action. So I'm excited to be here and happy to be part of the conversation.
Yeah, I'm glad you're here, and Bill, I think I can say that, you know, you are one of my favorite white guys. I just want to call it that, because what, you know, I so much want is a world where, one, we can talk about color, and two, that there are more people that look like you that are in this space of having this conversation, particularly in the state of Minnesota. So thank you for all the work that you do. And I would say that from a genuality perspective, you show up every time. So thank you. Thank you very much. I have a couple of my own questions, but my guess is that you all have questions as well. And so let's make this a dialogue. And because I can't decide which question that you should answer, I present them as two, and you can pick whichever one. One is, I'm curious about your own emotions. What emotions do you have today? What did you have yesterday? Or whatever emotions you want to bring in this space. And then secondly, why are you here? What called you here? Certainly you got a call from Heidi, and she wanted you to participate in this conversation. But I have my own personal reasons that I can offer, and I'm guessing that you do as well. And then, like Heidi said, bring questions, so I'm thinking you all have questions too. So would love to hear what those are and what conversation we can have around that as what we're up to. I would say that from an emotional perspective, I have tried to ride a really straight line to my true north around one of my strengths that I hold, and that is to be calm. In the midst of uncertainty, if there's nothing else I can do, I need to be calm. Because if I can be calm, that means I can maintain my sanity, and it also allows me to trust and believe that everything's going to be all right. I'll end on that message of trust and everything's going to be all right. Bob Marley's one of my favorites in terms of the Three Little Birds song. It's something that rose me in strength when I didn't think that life was going to be great. I had lost my mom in 2016, and she was in the hospital, and 3 days before her passing, I somehow, some way, stood on my 2 feet and said, you know what, I'm going to sing, every little thing is going to be okay. And so in those moments of uncertainty and those moments when you don't think you can go ahead, that's what I try to do, and that's what I've tried to do in this period of unrest in our state, and as I just try to describe it to my children of what's going on, and even for myself. I'm glad that I'm in the space to try to be able to influence it, and I'm going to try to figure out how I can continue to contribute. So with that, anybody else that would like to get us started?
Yeah, I'd actually like to go. Emotionally, I'm angry, and I think just recently I've discovered that I've been angry. I didn't know that before. And all of the current events have kind of really brought that out, and as an artist I've been experimenting with my own personal story about being biracial and growing up in both environments simultaneously. White, affluent environment, rural, which is a whole another conversation when I was with my mother. And then with my dad, you know, coming over to North Minneapolis and growing up in the hood, and then, you know, switching back and forth. And these were, you know, I've got a lot of stories and things that I've experienced, but just lately, these are coming out, and I didn't know I was harboring these things until I started to talk about them and seeing what's going on, and the anger that I have, frankly, from both sides. And just kind of seeing the struggle and just wanting to like shake people up and get people to wake up. This whole identifier of race, and then you look at myself that's made up of both, and it's like, you know, there's only one race, and I'm kind of an example of that. But then you have these struggles from both sides, and then, you know, and also people trying to identify me and who do I identify with most? And other people that I've grown up with that are also biracial usually identify with one or the other a little more. They'll go more to the white side and they just completely go with that. Or they'll go to the black side and be, you know, what we quote unquote call militant, and they're just super black. And I've walked on both sides of the fence, and I've tried to bring both of those together. I've been ridiculed mostly by my black brothers and sisters for not like standing up really hardcore as I'm black, because I say if I do that, then I neglect who my mother is. And of course, in this society, in this country, I'm not white, I'm not seen that way. One interesting thing that was sort of a wake up for me is when I went to Ghana. I spent about 3 weeks in Ghana. And, when I first went there, I was like, motherland, I'm back home, my brothers and sisters, I'm back here, I wanted to figure out what this is all about. And I didn't feel completely welcomed. And after about 2 weeks, I sat down with someone I befriended there, and we got in a conversation. He basically told me, you're not black. We don't see you as black. You're a dark-skinned white guy. And that was just like, and I was like, you know what? He's right. But when I come back here, I'm seen as a light-skinned black guy. It's both. It's that whole social construct that we've created around race. And then, me trying to scream out to walk in both communities and to kind of fit in both communities, but also, slap both communities and say both of you guys are kind of ignorant and stupid. We talk about the whole the equity piece, and of course I'm more supportive with Black Lives Matter, because that needs to come up. That more equity has to be placed there so that we can all be equal. So I'm very much more, for one, I've been more accepted in the black community, of course. I've gone through lots of cultural shifts, moving from one community to the other. And just my perspective on that, I just recently realized that I think is pretty unique, and seeing, being in a room with my white family and seeing that white supremacy at work, seeing that white privilege. I'm there in the room, I watch it, but I don't have access to that, but it's my family who has that. And then at the same time, I'm also the recipient of that in a negative way. So I just realized that I've been growing up with that, not always being included, almost, but not quite. And that's from both sides. Growing up in the hood, me being bullied, called the, light-skinned, pretty motherfucker with the good hair. And,
I'm sorry, I can only resonate.
Yeah. So I've grown up with that, and, lots of fights, lots of physical fighting. And just, and also as an artist, my whole life contemplating and thinking and, evaluating and figuring out like all of that whole piece and what was the second part of the question?
You've done really well. You don't have to,
okay.
It's about, why are you here? But if you want to continue to it, you can.
Yeah, I don't want to take up all the air in the room. But again, so I'm making all these new series of artworks that deal with that. They deal with me being in both classes, and so I wanted to talk about that and some of the opportunities that I don't get as an artist, or the opportunities I get just so the inclusion box can be checked.
Right.
And that's becoming more relevant to me. It's more obvious now. So I'll open the floor to somebody.
I was gonna say, I would love, reactions, right? And so one of the dangers of these wonderful dialogues is you could go around, but at the same token, there's a desire to want to unpack. And I'd like to invite the idea that perhaps when you want to give, you can give. You don't have to give. And if you want to unpack a little bit of what Peyton said or somebody else said, let's do that. I mean, I for myself, there's like so much to unpack in what you shared in terms of your story and your experience. And there's a lot of, as humans, we connect automatically. Like, I'm connecting to some of the things that you said and thought, wow, there's many streets that I've walked on in North Minneapolis where I either almost got into a fight or got into a fight because of the color of my skin, the straightness of my hair, and reactions that people had to me. And so there's some interesting things that we've experienced. Interesting, Minnesota, right?
Yeah.
Things that we've experienced in our lifetime here. So thank you for sharing what you've shared.
I would just, as a reaction to what Peyton is saying, like how I feel, there's anger, there's all those emotions there, but I feel emboldened and powerful. Because what I realize is no one can be me being me, right? And as a black boy, you put me in the room with most young white kids that grew up in certain environments, I can think circles around them. Because it's a survival instinct. And I have applied that to my life and business, right? The notion, I have no quorums with I was a kid that built a $2 million house at 28 years old. I've been to the highest rungs of American society, looked up there and said, it's not there, I'm good. And so my life is about this.
Yeah.
How do I build where I'm from? So my mom can walk down the street safely and be in a black neighborhood. That's my purpose, right? I don't want to be included in your party. I like my music better. So how do I start to connect and say, we got what we need. We just have to stop trying to go to parties that weren't meant for us in the first damn place. And then getting the resources, not even getting the resources, just stop contributing our resources to places that don't invest in us. I haven't watched cable in years. Getting some of my friends to stop watching cable, and we collectively pool those $200, right?
Yeah.
We started to just not go downtown every Friday and go on the patio right here. And we started talking about how much money are we saving as a result, and not just the money. Speaking of that, we're doing business. You can just drop right on the floor.
Right there, okay.
Yeah, it's fine.
Feel a little comfy.
Yeah. Thank you. Real life idea.
I
The life of entrepreneurs. You gotta get
need a name.
Houston, white.
White, okay. One, sure. Okay.
Thank you.
Have a nice day.
But taking our power back. So I feel emboldened. The conversation has to switch, right? From being included to being understood that I am the special sauce. Why does the NFL need Jay-Z? Because they don't have his perspective. That's powerful, right? I don't want to go and become a watered down version of myself to live in Woodbury. I don't even like Woodbury. There's nothing against Woodbury, but I'm saying I like where I'm from. And I want to, you know what I'm saying? So in this moment, I feel like it's our time, and we have to control the controllables and own our own selves and our stories. And whoever wants to be a part of that tribe, let's go. And who doesn't, God bless you.
Yeah, I would echo that when, how I feel. My wife asked me this because her friends were asking her, how's your wife feeling about this? And, I got on the call with some colleagues, and they're like, I'm a white boy from here, foreign boy from Fargo. I'm a white woman from here, so I don't really, Ron, how are you feeling? And I can go all the way back to my life in general, but Philando Castile, it was a conversation that, came in the office, and they're like, white people were like, man, Ron, are you scared? Like, is Kim worried when you're out in the car? And I'm like, I've lived it. This is like normal for me. So this is nothing new. You're just seeing it. We've said it, but we didn't have cameras, right? And so for me, it's not anger. It's emboldened. And for me, it's been like I said, I've been in banking for a long time. I'm at the bank I'm currently at right now. I'm the first black man in commercial banking in their 76-year history. Period. They've never had anybody. So when they said it to me, they were like, this in our 75-year history, you're the first black man. I'm like, whoa, that's crazy. Like, to even think about that, it's a well-known bank. They do a lot of work in the community with nonprofits in the black community, but yet you have no one on your staff that's ever been or lived in our community like that. That's nuts. right? And so for me, I'm normally a quiet guy. I'm normally stay in the background and kind of just, you know, I wouldn't say suffer in silence, but it's more of, oh, here's the pain, channel that pain to get us level yourself up. And, you know, when I think about how I can help is now, before I wasn't saying these things. I wasn't saying, you know, like, what do we do, Ron? I'm like, well, honestly, just think about it. Have you read Assata Shakur? Have you read Malcolm X? Okay, you've heard about Malcolm X. Have you even read this book or that book? And you're like, well, why do I ever even need to read that? Well, you know everything about Christopher Columbus. And if you understand our educational system, then that's what it is. That's why you don't have perspective or context, because you're not reading the same things to get that. So you understand the American Revolution. You understand that, hey, they dumped tea and they grabbed muskets because they were getting taxed, they were being oppressed. But if Black Lives Matter goes out there and says, hey, somebody just killed our brother on the street, we're gonna protest, we're gonna riot, we're gonna do all these things. Whoa, wait a minute. That's not what Martin Luther King would have did. What? That's what the founding fathers did. And you respect that and you glorify that. But with us, you don't do that. So now for me, it's, Ron, you have to stop being so silent and trying to, you know, just do it on your own, because I've always looked at myself as an explorer. And so when you guys talk about how I'm on this side and on that side, I'm like, I can be in any room, because I'm a natural explorer. When I got here, I'm like, I started playing AAU basketball, and I'm like, man, this is what they hop in their van, they got TVs in the van, they go drive down to Texas and play this, they got the video. I'm like, man, this is crazy. So I want to learn. I'm like, how are y'all doing this? What's happening here? And so you go into the white community, and then you start to understand, oh, okay, this is how they move. And so I'm talking with them, trying to build a relationship, because I'm an explorer. If you go to a foreign land, you're not gonna, you know, you want to say, okay, how's that fruit grow? What's that happen? How did you do that? So you're naturally engaging with folks. And so for me, I have to start talking to folks and saying, this is what we need to do. And one of the big things, again, is this equity, it's this investment. Being at a bank, we have to do more than just, oh, we're gonna sponsor this event. Oh, we're gonna have a big name that we corporate sponsor, we gave a lot of money to that, but we're never gonna be at this barbershop, ever. And then they come back and complain, well, nobody's applying for jobs, or nobody's applying for the programs that we have. Well, I know this much. If you want the Target CEO, what you gonna do? Oh, how many children do they have? Oh, what, they play soccer here? Oh, they like golf? You're gonna try to engage in that community and be there. And I think that conversation hasn't been had in a lot of these diversity and inclusion. It's just, oh, we know that Houston's having an event. Sponsor a table there. Yeah, sponsor a table, yeah. And then they throw it on their corporate website, and then now we're included. Here's our inclusion. So again, for me, I think it's really trying to have those emboldened conversations and saying, hey, you can't keep doing the same things that you've done in the past thinking you're gonna get changes. Like all of a sudden, they're giving ridiculous amounts of money, right? Ridiculous. I mean, one organization raised like $25 million in 8 days. Now we're set. Well, that's something you've been doing in the past. That has to change. Because I can tell you this much, at the end of all of this, when West Broadway comes back, it's gonna be the same thing. They were already 7, 10, 15, 30 years behind. So you just build something back up, and it's still degradation back there, but it's no riots and no COVID. So again, that's really where I'm looking at it.
You painted a future. No, you painted a future of really true, right, integral steps into the process to move us forward and beyond what we've been doing. Right? Absolutely.
So many things I could say about
I know, right?
things, right? Like so many things going through my head. I'll pick up though, Ron, one of the words you said, explorer. I think that is such an important word because of what comes with being an explorer. Curiosity, knowing that when you explore, you're going to discover something. You might run into an obstacle or find yourself in the wrong place and have to, figure out what am I. There's so many beautiful things about that word. And when I think about a lot of the things that you've said about corporate America, and I think about my experience, I don't see companies really stepping into that explorer space. Instead, what I typically see is, we're going to do one of 5 things because this is what you're supposed to do when you do diversity. Diversity Council, check. Employee resource groups, check. We'll set goals for recruiting, check. We've got to train everyone, check. And we might do a mentoring program or something along those lines. Maybe some community kinds of things, so maybe 6, right? And so when I am, whether I was within organizations or working with organizations, and they say, hey, they usually come to me with a solution. Hey, I want to do training. My first question is why? But not why training? Why do you want to spend? Why do you want to invest in this? Do you understand the value? Do you actually want to make change? And are you ready to discover some stuff that you might not want to discover? That's going to be really hard, and in order to actually make the kind of change that you say you want to make, you're going to have to acknowledge the ugly stuff as well as, right? And really go deep and understand how do we operate as a business, not just, hey, let's bring in some training. And so I feel like there's, on one hand, you go, awesome, look at all the money that they've raised, and awesome, look what they're doing. But so many companies, I think, are treating this as an event. And there will be some immediate change and some immediate positive impact, and then, like you said, we'll be maybe not back where we are, but a step. And if we keep making incremental change, 100 years from now we're going to be a little bit better, but we're not going to be where we need to be. So that explorer lens, I think, is just critical. And the other thing I'll make with respect to identity, because you guys really talked about that, is, with respect to employee resource groups, I see so often it's, in companies, here's the Black employee resource group, here's the Asian employee resource group, here's women, right? So pick one. Which one do you pick? Which one do you pick? Do you have to just pick one? Or I think you should be in this one because this is how I see you. This is the identity that I.
That's real. That happens.
It is.
That is really
I
real.
see you this way, so this is what I've labeled you this now, and I will treat you the way that I've been taught, through all my conditioning, because of the way I see you, whether you identify that way or not. And so there's a lot of stuff there, and until we start having real conversations about those kind of things, we just keep putting programs in place. And program is not a strategy, and program does not lead to transformation.
That's right. You're surfacing for me this notion of when we decide that we have a concept or a product or innovation, right, or a business, we cultivate that business until it just can't survive anymore. And I present sort of a question of why can't diversity, inclusion, and equity be that same kind of mind frame? That you step in, you cultivate it, right, until there's just, infinity and beyond. We're so busy as humans wanting to run business, to go after, goals. Why can't the go after be a world or a place where there's more diversity, inclusion, and equity?
Well, and you think about how, if you think about the business model, right? There's a problem, and we know who the people are that we will serve to address that problem, and we explore lots of different solutions. And it's, why aren't we looking at diversity and inclusion in that way? Who are all the people that we serve? What are the problems? And we don't approach diversity and inclusion the same way we approach doing business. And
there's a friend that I think maybe you and I both know, I'm not sure, Sharon Piper Diggs, she's no longer with us anymore.
Yeah.
And Sharon used to always say, diversity is not a problem to be had, or it's not a problem to be solved, it's an opportunity to be had.
Yeah.
I'd just share a little bit about kind of why I'm here to answer that question, and maybe to build on a couple things you guys have said, which is, to me, if you looked at the total sum of money that companies have spent on diversity and inclusion, and then you said the return that they expected was more women in leadership, more black folks in leadership, more people of color in leadership, and then you actually measured that, it's got to be one of the worst investments corporate America has collectively ever made. And I don't know if I'm right, I'm not a professional,
But let's
I don't
guess,
have a
right?
degree,
Yeah.
but my theory, or one of the things that I saw in spending time with the folks that are diversity and inclusion professionals, is they end up spending a lot of their time on, the business resource groups for LGBT folks, for black folks, for women, for veterans, for disabled folks, and the group that has all the power and the resources is my guys, and they're not spending any time with those guys.
Yeah, yeah.
And to me, what I'm trying to do, and what I'm sort of the mission I'm on, is to try to get more of the white men who tend to control the resources and the power in big companies and in most places to recognize that they're part of the problem and that the only ones that can fix it are them. I think it was Killer Mike, and I may misattribute this quote, but I think he said, or somebody said, America doesn't have a race problem, it's got a racism problem. And the people that are going to fix the racism problem in America are the people that cause the racism problem. And
Yeah,
so,
that's a
so when you say, why am I here, that's what I'm trying to do, is to try to help, and in terms of how I feel, I would say in terms of, the usual emotions like rage and anger and sadness and things, but also just a lot more people are paying attention. So while you're emboldened, I'm at least hopeful that more people are going to want to lean in and be part of the solution. So.
That's right, yeah. You're reminding me, Bill, if I could just for just a moment, a thing that you may or may not know about, but there's an organization called the White Men Partnership. Maybe you've heard about it? Yeah. It's something I just learned about, so just wanted to offer that up for you. Kjirsten.
And I was going to say, I think it's twofold, Bill. What I'm trying to do is get black men, particularly, to step up and lead and to disengage. You can choose where you live, where you eat, where you spend your money, who you talk to. That's power.
No question.
So it's hard to say, like, we need D&I if we're screwing ourselves.
Right.
Right? It's not going to have the same impact. And, so it's twofold. We do need to have some serious, honest conversations, but those conversations equally shared power. You might have, my conversation with U.S. Bank is this, and we're building and forming a relationship. You are capacity. I am culture. I don't feel you have any more resources than I have. They're just different. And so to fix this, we have to come to this that we both have power. They're just different power. And we're going to play in that way. And I think that conversation makes it easier to be had. Like, it's not a hierarchy. There's not on either side, right? And it's not anger. It's just, what can we do? If you look at it to your point, I look at some of this stuff and I just tapped out. Like, either somebody's incompetent or corrupt. I don't know. I'd rather lean to incompetence and just say we got to do something different and quickly.
And what you're talking about too is really hard, or it's a realization that I came about a few years ago. And it was after the movie, and I probably don't have the title of it exactly right, but 7 Days of Slavery. Is that the name?
7 Days a Slave.
Of slave. So there's a point in the movie where someone is hanging nearly, right? Feet are trickling or tipping on the grass, and lots of other slaves are walking by. What that brought up for me was the old adage of mind your own business. Mind your own business. Keep on going. And that's hardwired in the black culture, or at least from my experience. And so, right, this notion of joining together, helping each other out, that's a hard thing to break and a cycle to break. And the more of us, the more of us can do that, can be a part of trying to break that cycle, right? The better off we will be. And so just trying to balance where this stuff comes from.
You reminded me, I have thought of myself for quite some time as an ally. And I attended a virtual webinar, and one of the speakers was talking about the difference between being an ally and an advocate. And I went, oh, I think I am an ally, but I need to be an advocate. And so not completely standing by, right? But in the example they used, I thought was a really good one is, you know, you're in a meeting and, you know, black counterpart doesn't get invited to, you know, offer or contribute to the conversation, or gets talked over, what may be the case. And after the meeting, as an ally, I go, I'm sorry that happened, wow, that's not okay, etc. As an advocate, in the meeting, I say, you know, I think Tanya was, you know, starting to talk, can we just give her a minute to finish? Or someone shares the same idea you did and say, yeah, it's great that Tanya shared that so that you could build on that, or, you know, but to do that in the moment, that in the moment action versus that, and it really made me think, wow, where have I maybe been an ally thinking that's the role I need to play, where I could have been an advocate. And how can I keep my eyes open for those opportunities to be an advocate, but with the hopes that we don't need to advocate for each other, that we can advocate for ourselves, or that we don't even need to advocate because it's happening, right? But in the meantime, being able to step into that different place.
That's right. It's like holding each other up, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Thank you.
This is why I like to be hyperbolic about this thing, because I think a lot of folks think, I mean, I think about my neighbors, right? Like, we live not that far apart, right? And folks are, you know, I would start this conversation by saying this is the most racist region in the country. And they would, no, that can't be true. And Mississippi, I'm like, the average black family in Mississippi makes more than the average black family here. How do you explain that? Even though for white families, we make 50% more. And so it's, so I would say that to push on that idea of doing nothing, or being I'm a progressive and I voted for, you know, this is the classic white story, I voted for Barack Obama, I thought I solved racism. You know, like, doing nothing is contributing to the problem.
Right. Yeah, and that's like the current conversation, right? That the mediocre is, right, not what is not considered, not racist. It's an issue of, if you do nothing, you're almost accepting what's going on.
That's right,
Yeah.
you're perpetuating the problem.
Yeah. Thank you.
And maybe just to build on Kjirsten on your point is, and this is something I've been pushing with, that Paul Williams really banged me over the head with, and banged the Itasca Project, which is, you know, a community group of leaders, is thinking about how we do the work we do, and working with people, working with community versus doing to community. And that's, you know, your point about
But the issue
being
is,
on a level playing field.
yeah, but it's what is community, right?
Right. Sure.
This is folks within our own community have learned the game. And we're operationalizing some of the trauma. There's more money in the medicine than there is in the cure. And so I've been asked to be on any number of boards and turned them all down on purpose. It's a protest. I'm not going to be the articulate Negro sitting up here also perpetuating these issues in my community. I'm going to go where the real work is to be done, where these people are, right? I moved to the suburbs. I'm the classic story of what black success looks like. And I'm like, this is bullshit. These people are calling the cops on me because I'm having a barbecue and playing Frankie Beverly. I got $300,000 worth of cars in the garage. You kidding me? I make more money than you do. But it's not my tribe. So my real job is to go where the people who look like me understand me and my kids and everybody and make that prosperous. And then Itasca and CR departments should be investing in that. Not in services, because that makes the savior feel like, well, you know, I gave $25,000 to the... Go check the books and see how much of that money actually got down to where it really needed to be. And so that to me is the deeper work, right? We gotta have a real honest conversation and open the books and talk about who's been doing us in. And are we really gonna be brave now to create something different? Because as entrepreneurs It's business owners, it's grandmoms, and grandpops, and people that live in the neighborhood that know what's best for it. Not a few black folks that have ascended to the top.
That's so hard too, right? Or at least for me, I'll say. It's hard in that what happened for me over the last month and a half is I realized that the conversation I had at home about Minnesota was, I'm ready to go. Like, that's all my kids heard. Minnesota, it snows here too much, I'm ready to go. It snows too much, I'm ready to go. Right? Like, so they kind of knew about grandma and grandpa, right? And people who are here, most of our family's here. But all they heard was, Minnesota, I'm ready to go. Until, unfortunately, we lose another black man. I drive them through town, or my daughter protested that whole week and stomped or walked or rode through a neighborhood that they grew up in. Well, sorta. I'm 56 and 10. I grew up on 38th, sorta on 4th. My grandmother was on 40th and Clinton, one of my other grandmother. And then the spokesman was on the 4th Avenue street up from Chicago. But they had never driven in the context of, this is your hometown. This is a place that you should be proud of. This is a community that you were raised in. So when I hear you, Kjirsten, I say, I worked so hard, to some degree, proudly hard, to keep my children safe in a neighborhood where I thought that they could get a good education, which they did, but I actually didn't have them go to that school. So Hale was our neighborhood school, right? My kids went to Cretin in St. Paul. Why'd they go to Cretin? Because it was a private school, right? Like, I could preserve and shelter them and send them to Cretin. They could learn how to speak and be articulate. And then they went off. My son is at Morehouse. My daughter started at Hampton. She came back and went to Hamlin. But all for the whole fact of trying to assimilate, to get along, to be a part of, and be accepted for who they were. And be good black children.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And that's great. Like, some of that is really, really good. And again, like I said, some of it I'm proud of. But I listen and I hear you and I say, you know what? I have denied the state that I was born in. I have denied some of my blackness that I thought to some degree I was connected to, and even more so growing up, or I was less connected growing up than I am now. But I still have work to do. I still have work to do.
On both sides.
Yeah.
Right? There's work to do.
So I want to piggyback on that
Yeah.
part, like leaving the community in spirit. As an artist going for grants and trying to get that leg up in my career, that's happened to me many times. You know, not wanting to be recognized as fully African American, because then I know I'm not going to get that grant.
Yeah.
I have to wait for that opportunity, the cultural community grant, the minority grant. But if I want to go for that big money, that super large sculpture that's going to be in the public eye, I'm not going to get that unless if I put on a different hat, and kind of walk.
Play the role. That's what we heard. Play the role.
Dance to dance, right? And so, I think the anger part of me, the frustrating part, is just realizing like how beneficial we all could be if we start bringing down that comfort of always wanting to be around familiarity. We want to be around our own people, and we don't want no one else coming in that doesn't look like us. Of course, here I am walking in both communities and realizing, no, that's not the way. That's not the way. Everyone has something to offer. Everyone has something to contribute, and there's power and beauty on both sides. And if you bring it together, like I try to tell the white community, it's like, you know how much more you will rise up if you let this in, and in the stance of the black community, like how you can get out of where you're at if you're a little bit more open to suggestions and want to do the work to make it happen.
Right.
And so this part of my frustration is just realizing that as a species, we can grow into this idea of looking for knowledge. That's where we need to be at. We need to get our species into to advancing into knowledge instead of all this little tribal, small community thinking. You know, of course we talk about that equity because certain people need to come up and certain people need more right now so that we can do that. But if people just opened up more that what's beyond their community and really digest and just take on, to be vulnerable, to look at other things, to try other things, to try to speak another language spiritually, and involve yourself, you know, really get that full inclusion. You'll see how much you'll grow. You'll see how much other things will open and how you will elevate yourself for doing that.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Well said.
Comes to mind the idea of infinity symbol, right? That it's ongoing. If we can be in community in that infinity sort of space and recognize that sometimes I'm going to go over here, but that doesn't mean I'm denying you over here.
Right.
And that you shouldn't judge me if I'm over here, and that, oh, I'm over here and connected and doing some things and making change happen. And it's all going on and on and on to make a difference. What else? What did we not talk about today?
Well, I love that you asked the question to start out with, how are you feeling? Because I think, you know, there's so many things right now that that people are feeling and not talking about, or not, they're denying themselves the opportunity to really feel it, even if it's painful.
Yeah.
Because in those feelings there's so much that we can learn. And so I just wanted to acknowledge that I think it's and I, you know, and you think about when people ask, how are you? Well, fine, yeah.
Fine. It's like the
we've all
elevator
been
speech.
trained, right? Yeah, exactly. And you know, what if we all today or every day, you know, the next person we ask, how are you? We say it in a way that says, how are you? And then listen. No, really, how are you? And really let them, and then what if that person with that invitation, you know, really shares, here's how I am. You know, I think that's a part of the healing process. And also, you know, something that can start to connect us.
Kjirsten, I had a friend that shared with me a perfect response, I thought, when she said, how are you? And I just like, and I said, I'm sorry. She said, no, I asked you. I asked you, how were you? I was like, wow, that's like an invitation. Well, can we sit down for another hour, please?
Yeah.
That's real.
In a world where there's healing that's needed, we ought to be able to have a conversation.
And to do that together, or to do that with others,
Yeah.
is I mean, we're human. We need that connection.
It's also, to me, though, it's a great example of how fraught these conversations can be. Because I think on the one hand, you know, there's lots of folks. You know, I watched the rooftop conversation last week, and they were talking the one young woman who was like, "I'm tired of being your unpaid counselor on how black people are feeling." And so, you know, to me, it's one of those like, gee whiz, when is the right time to ask? And really, do you really want to hear? And when is not? And, you know, I was talking to some of my friends from college, and one guy was like, he's a senior executive, a big company, and literally said, I don't think I know a single black person that I could send a text to right now that wouldn't be like, why are you sending me a text out of the clear blue sky? And that, to me, it's a great example of how disconnected the communities in this region are.
And Bill, you are bringing up something for me that I believe to be unpopular by my black friends. And I've shared it with people when they bring to me that their white friend has came to them and talked to them about X related to race. Imagine the idea of putting your hand on a stove that's hot. The audacity of me as a black woman to make it hotter. Because you won't touch it again.
Yeah.
It doesn't bring us to a place where there's no fire. It just hurts me when I hear that people are angry because somebody has asked them a question. And what I want to give back is the idea that you were wise enough to ask me. I'm gonna believe that you're wise enough to understand that I'm not the only vessel that you will learn through. Because if you are believing that, I'm concerned.
Right.
I'm concerned.
Yeah, I think that is so real, and I'm an entrepreneur, so I'm a doer, right? Like, I ideate with the best of them, I plan with the best of them, but there is no such thing as perfection.
Right.
We gotta go. And you gotta be brave enough to try something. So the folks that come in and say, well, how are you feeling? I got some projects I'm working on. Would you like to help with that?
Right.
Because asking me how I feel, me talking to you to make you feel better about, that's cool. Or do you want to actually do something that your grandkids can open up their history books and say you were a part of making this happen, so generations benefited from it? Or do you want to talk? And I think that's where we have to get past these passive aggressive conversations. This is phenomenal, Heidi. Thank you. And this is
Yes.
this is what's up. But I would just like challenge everybody to figure out what can you do, not what can you say. Now who can you ask? I don't want no damn sponsors. I want partners. You know, and that's the notion. And I agree. The book that I just showed Peyton. My entire brand structure is built on human connection is the most powerful force in nature. And our differences make us dope. I'm not afraid, intimidated. My best friend is German-Irish, 56 years old, graduated top class from Harvard. That's my life, but I'm as black as hell, right? And I stand boldly on who I am and what I believe, and because that was put in me from my family. Society's not gonna give that to me, right? And these are the things that we have to push forward. You know, we are and can be amazing together. I love that point that Peyton was making. Like, here's an opportunity to realize that together we can elevate, and we got to do it.
It's an excellent place to end. Thank you so much, Kjirsten, for
really?
having us here. I know, right? We could go on. And Ron, thank you very much. And Peyton and Kjirsten and Bill, this has been just a wonderful time. Heidi, so much. Thank you so much for allowing me
Thank you,
to be here.
Tanya, for
Yeah.
holding this amazing space. And I just want to say thank you individually, Bill and Kjirsten and Peyton and Kjirsten and Ron. It was just wonderful to have you. Just before we close out today, I just want to share with my new friend here that you touched on so many things that really touched me deeply today. Not only are we both artists, but I have two biracial sons. And their journey right now is fascinating, and one I'll never understand, but I thank you for sharing yours. So we will continue this series. I also want to raise up Spray Finger. One of the things that's important to us at the Inclusion Action Collective is that we ask our followers to support artists of color, and so Spray Finger organization, you can reach them at info@sprayfinger.com, right?
Yes.
And see all of the wonderful things that they do with youth and the beautiful artwork. I also want to just give a shout out to Peyton for being the artist that for the portrait of George Floyd that has become such an inspiration for so many people. So, and if you want to check out the other three parts of our series, you can find those on the community page at inclusionaction.com. So we hope that you'll continue to follow us. And with that, thanks again, and continue the conversation and move it to action. Let's do something together.